You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hello. How are you? I want to tell you guys a little story, and I promise I will make it quick. I know I say that every single podcast, and then I never do, but I am going to this time. So I went to lunch with my husband and the other day, and we started talking to our waiter, and he said, "Oh yeah, I just moved down from Colorado." And you guys know me by now. I mean, come on. Anyone says anything that even remotely could possibly have to do with addiction, and I'm like bringing it up. My kids are like, "Oh my gosh, not again, Mom." But he said Colorado. And so, of course, my immediate word association, one of them with Colorado, other than mountains, beautiful, hilly, skiing, is drugs, because marijuana became legalized in Colorado a while ago. And of course, I bought like every single book that analyzed how that is working for the state of Colorado, which I will touch base on just a little bit. But I said, "Oh yeah." So of course, knowing me, I have to bring this up. I can't not talk about addiction with anybody. So I said, "Oh, I've never been to Colorado," which is true. "But how did you find like the legalization of marijuana?" Like I said, "I just assume like it's everywhere. Is it everywhere? Like, are my assumptions correct?" And our waiter was like, "Well," and he was in his like 20s. And he was like, "Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like everywhere, but pretty much on like most street corners, like people are smoking." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." So, and I was trying to feel him out for like, was he pro pot? Was he against pot? And he's like, "Well, I don't do it. But like, yeah, most people in car, like it's, and I was like, "Oh, really? So how do they get like a hold of it? Is it like they're smoking it? Are they like doing edibles? What are they doing, and where are they getting it?" And like then he proceeded to tell me in great detail about this distilleries and like how to get a prescription for it, and then like how, like what the wait room looked like and how many waiting rooms there were. And I was thinking, I didn't say it, but I was thinking, that's interesting for somebody who doesn't like partake in marijuana, for you to know so much detail about it. But I'm quizzing him about it, and because I'm curious, and I'm like, "So is it just like casual? Like, are people just super casual?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's natural. A lot of people use it instead of having drinks. It can relax you, and like it just, it's not like he literally said, it's not like you make bad decisions or bad choices when you're smoking pot. It's not like it affects you in any way like cocaine does or meth does." And you guys, this is where like I have to be very socially aware and not come across as rude. But like, I know the research, and I know that actually is not true at all. So it's like, okay, do you educate the person standing in front of you and come across as possibly rude? Or do you keep a quiet mouth and just nod and go, let them believe what they want to believe? I chose to be quiet because my husband stepped in and he was like, let me just lovingly educate you a little bit about that. Because he's in the healthcare industry, so he studies a lot of the science behind. He gets proposals all the time to purchase marijuana companies, which he turns down every time. But he knows enough about the science to know that if you do the research, you will find out that not only do you make impaired decisions, but physically, marijuana is worse than cigarettes on your body. Your physical, your lungs, absolutely will get damaged from smoking marijuana. It does impair your thinking when you are high. And although you can say it is a, quote, natural plant, it is laced with many unnatural qualities. So it is not 100% natural. Men have messed with the formula. The marijuana that was taken back in like 1960 is very different from the marijuana that is used today. It's far more potent and strong. So it is not, quote, natural. In addition to this, it does cause, marijuana can cause, what's the word I'm looking for? Psychosomatic behavior. It can cause schizophrenia, actually. So you don't know how your body is going to react. And there are 2 books that I will link in the show notes that will show you the data on this. But new studies are coming out all the time where first-time users of marijuana can have let me back up. I'm sorry. Certain people have a genetic predisposition so that when they smoke pot or ingest marijuana for the first time, they can turn into a schizophrenic. It is actually incredibly dangerous to smoke pot. So you are risking quite a bit because you don't know if you have this genetic predisposition. And I actually have a friend whose child was brilliant and got into college, composed music, was a stunning kid, and got involved in the wrong crowd innocently in college, took a couple hits off of a joint, never had done it before, was like, oh, it's not like I'm doing a line of cocaine. It's not like I'm doing meth. I can do this. And that had that genetic predisposition and instantly, and of course there's lots more science behind this. I'm making general statements here, but now is suffering from schizophrenia. He had to drop out of college. He lives at home. He is addicted. He can no longer compose music that makes any sense. And his parents are completely struggling. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because I know for me, when I was married to a good man struggling with addiction, he tried to convince me that if he wasn't drinking every day and he wasn't doing the hard drugs, that marijuana was okay, that smoking pot was fine. They didn't have edibles, or maybe they did back then, but I didn't know about them. And I want to make the case that it's not. I want to make the case that any kind of drugs that alter your way of thinking, that have, potential harm, long-term harm to your body, is not acceptable and not okay. And if you are struggling like me with kind of like figuring out your boundaries, like, well, is beer okay and not hard liquor? Or is marijuana okay but not cocaine? It's all not okay. Is one drink okay but not 5? It's a personal decision that you have to make. For me, it was not, and none of it was okay. Because addiction is addiction is addiction. Now, you get to make up your own mind. You get to ask yourself this question. You don't have to follow what I did or my boundaries. You get to make your own. But I just want to make the case that when you get this argument, which a lot of us got about pot being natural and not having any serious side effects and being far better for you than alcohol, I'm going to challenge that and say, please get educated. And particularly if you have children, that are biologically, from the person who is suffering from addiction. You absolutely need to educate your kids that pot is not innocent. Pot could have an incredibly bad side effect on their mental and physical health. And that it won't, the way I do it is I just tell my kids it's just not an option for you because of your past and because of your genes. It's just not, you can't be like other kids and just think it's like laissez-faire and, it's fine to do. Some people can experiment with drugs and not get addicted, but my kids can't take that risk because of their father, their biological dad. And that's the boundary I set for my kids. So no drinking, no drugs ever. It's just, you got to find another outlet to deal with stress, which is a reason why a lot of people turn to that, right, as a coping mechanism. So for you guys out there, educate your kids if you have them. Get these 2 books if you'd like to. I'm going to link them. That are a lot of science behind. They're specifically for parents on educating your kids about drugs and the science behind marijuana that's coming out. And then if you don't have children, just ask yourself, really, what are your true boundaries around this? Are you really okay with having a couple, them having a couple drinks? And then also another question to ask yourself is, how do you feel about boundaries on your life? Like, are you somebody who's not going to have alcohol in the house because, your loved one is trying to get sober and you want to support them? Are you going to partake in marijuana if you're living in a state where it's legal? But you don't want them to partake in marijuana. Is that something that you guys are comfortable with? Or is it more likely where you want to be supportive of their sobriety and make your home and your body and your relationship, kind of a drug-free, drinking-free zone? Ask yourself those questions. For me, I didn't drink for 9 years, maybe 10, when I was married to my ex-husband. I thought, if I'm asking him not to drink, why would I allow myself to drink? I did not allow alcohol in the house. I just thought it's too great of a temptation to have. In the outside world, it's so tempting. Everybody drinks. There's advertisements, there's billboards, particularly on holidays for drinking. Why can't I make my home a refuge for my loved one who struggles with addiction? He gets tempted out in the real world all the time. Why not make my house a safe zone, a place that he can come and hide away from the pressures of the real world of drinking? It didn't work. He just left the house and drank. So, but that was my thinking. That was my train of thought. And I still would make that same decision, honestly. I absolutely would, because I think it was the right decision. And I personally didn't drink because I'm like, look, it's not something I feel comfortable doing if I'm asking somebody else not to drink. Even if he wasn't, and plus I hated alcohol because it was ruining my life. So why would I want to ingest it? And then, with marijuana, it's just like, back when I was with somebody suffering from addiction, it was completely illegal. And I was never comfortable with having illegal substances, in the house or anywhere else. So it wasn't an option. But you have to ask yourself, times are changing, and you have to ask yourself, what are you comfortable with? What are your standards? What are you for yourself? What are your boundaries? It's just worth asking yourself these questions so that you're clear. It doesn't mean you don't reserve the right to change your mind, but being proactive and asking yourself how you feel will help you be a better communicator and partner with somebody struggling with addiction. So that is it for today. I promised I'd make it short, and I think I did. So I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with Michelle's personal thoughts and beliefs. From one woman to another, bonded together by the fact we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.